Good girl. Let's go this way. Come on. Come on, puppy dog. Hi. Hey, what's up? How's it going? Come on, doggy. Oh, man. Sometimes what you have to listen to people say can be quite painful. Same old silly stuff. There was just a live where someone was trying to explain away why Israel destroyed those three aid worker vehicles. So dogs are saying hi. Hey, what's up, Maz? Beautiful dog. Wow, yeah, dogs are amazing. Yeah, so there are people trying to explain away saying that they didn't have the right vehicle markings, that they didn't have the right protocol or something like that. They notified the IDF. This is, by the way, this is the same exact explanation that was given for that poor young girl, Hind. Remember her? She was in the vehicle with her family. A tank had shot the vehicle. It was five family members had died. She survived. She called the what is essentially 911 in Gaza. They got a hold of her. They said, "Okay, remember this girl? She was on the phone. She was still alive." They told her that the first responders were going to come help her. Then they contacted the Israelis and said, "Hey, yo, you engaged a civilian vehicle. There's one survivor in there. We're going to come get her. We're bringing a Red Crescent ambulance with two workers, and we're going to come help this girl. Do not fire." They go, "Okay, got it, got it, got it." What happens? They wait for the two workers to get there. They fire on the vehicle. They destroy the vehicle and the two workers, and then they kill the girl. You can't keep making these mistakes after people notify you and somehow claim that you just don't know. I mean, come on. That isn't the fog of war. That's called intent to murder. And again, everybody sees through it now. This is the same. God, I tell you what, these people, they can't help themselves when they try to lie about this stuff. It's just in their nature to lie. I hate to say it, it's just lie. I hate to say it, it just is. I don't want to be a broken record, but I'm just so sick and tired to hear these implausible explanations for why the Israelis murder so many civilians and journalists and children. That's that's Israel for you. Yeah, and then earlier today, people were saying that it's not Palestine. I used to somehow try to figure out how to reconcile what's going on with the Israeli state. I mean, I'm not Palestinian, so I'm just trying to think of how can this be worked out. Everyone's saying a two-state solution. I think there needs to be a single state that has nothing to do with Israel. That has to go away altogether. That Zionist ideology and somehow explaining away the quote right to exist. You don't have a right to exist. What people should do is have a safe place to be in a region where they can have equal rights. I'm all for that. And I think that could be what could be worked out. But it's never going to work with the structure that's in place right now. Never, never, ever going to work. And it's because the hardliners, what do they want? They want to have an ethno state and they want to have expansive borders. And they want to take and settle more land in perpetuity. And they're trying to drag the United States, God, it's nice out there. They're trying to drag the United States into a war with Iran. This is the sick part about this right now. And it's concerning. We saw that the Israelis just bombed, the consulate in Syria, the Iranian consulate. And I don't know, did you hear about Ecuador went into? This is crazy. I don't know if you watch Richard Medhurst, but Ecuador stormed the Mexican embassy in Quito, Ecuador, the capital, and took out some person that had sought refuge there, which is just an unbelievable violation of international standards and norms. And this is what Israel does. They sort of set off this chain reaction of illegal rogue behavior, and then others get emboldened to do it. And the U.S. and its puppet regimes around the world and its complicit criminal leaders do this kind of stuff, and they try to get away with it. Yeah, somebody's saying here that World War III will have to happen. I hate war because having been in one, I can tell you it's the most miserable thing you'll ever experience. It's terrible. And I wish we could find a way to peacefully resolve our differences. But the differences aren't created by people who are peaceful. The differences are created by people who are not peaceful, trying to further and subject others to their will. And that's the problem with the United States. I mean, wouldn't you love to be able to say good things about your country? I'm sure people from Costa Rica feel proud about their country. They're not invading and taking over other countries. They're not subjecting their neighbors to occupation and oppression. They're not undermining the governments of all these countries. But you can't say that about the U.S. The U.S., oh God, I tell you, it just makes me sick. It's such a beautiful place. So many amazing people. It really is a cool situation. The only problem is that we have a government that's dead set on maintaining an empire that's, of course, waning. And that's a dangerous thing. Very dangerous thing. Anyway, this is going to be a relatively short live for those of you. I'm just doing a quick walk with the dog, and then I'll be talking while I do this as long as I have a signal. But if anybody wants to come up as a guest and talk, that you're welcome to do so, especially if you're pro-Israeli. If you want to come on and give me a piece of your mind. Hey, how you doing, folks? You want to give me a piece of your mind? Do it, please. We can go back and forth. And by the way, I don't know if anybody's doing this, but I never do this. But people's lives keep coming down. Not mine, thankfully. But I think people. This is an unsubstantiated allegation, but I think people who are pro-Palestinian are reporting people pro-Israeli lives. I don't think anybody should report each other's lives. I never report somebody unless they threaten violence. That's a different story. Because somebody's annoying the hell out of me, it's like, well, whatever. I'll just change the channel. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But I've been on several pro-Israeli lives that have ended abruptly, and I don't think they're reporting themselves. And but I often go into these lives and just listen. And then if they're starting to say some particularly egregious things, I'll make some comments. My comments are never directed at anybody personally. I'll say things like, Israel is based upon the political ideology of Zionism, which is based on colonial land theft, something like that. And I believe that to be true. But I don't say, host, you're a moron because you like Zionism or something like that. I think that's childish. But anyway, so there is this one guy, I don't know if you've seen this guy. He's been on my lives a number of times. He comes up and he keeps asking me, what was it about your childhood that makes you want to favor the underdog or something shit like that? And then he accuses me of being, quote, kicked out of the army because when I was in Germany, they offered what's called early outs to officers because they were trying to draw down the force and save money under the Clinton administration. And so I wasn't going to be a career army officer, so I opted for it. And so the person's accusing me of having been kicked out of the army because I opted for an early out. Anyway, this person comes into lives when I'm in the lives and he starts just blasting these comments. It's so petty. But people are going to be who they are. Wow, what a nice day, man. Damn. Such a beautiful day. It's been really cold here. Our springs here normally aren't this cold. It's been really cold here lately, but today's nice. Thank goodness. So I hope you are having a nice Sunday wherever you may be. Some people are in different time zones. I think Maz is like 6:22 p.m. right now. It's 1:22 p.m. where I am. If anybody's a basketball fan, the national championship game is going to be tomorrow night. It is the University of Purdue against the University of Connecticut. I think Connecticut's going to win pretty easily if you're into that. They were the best team by far this year, I think. Anything's possible, but that's how I think it'll play out if you follow that. I don't really follow much NBA. I like March Madness, but I didn't follow it much this year. I don't know. I just wasn't into it. But in the past, I used to be really into it. So here's what somebody says. This is Saki. So you don't Jewish people should have. So I think what it meant to say. So you don't think Jewish people should have self-determination? Listen, I would never try to keep any group of people from having self-determination. That's not the point of this. The point of this is not the idea of safety and security and freedom from oppression. I'm for that for everybody. The point I'm trying to bring up is I try to balance this. I'm happy that there was a benefit granted to a group of people who were historically marginalized. I think that's fair. And I also see the harm that the Zionist project has caused to others. Just let's be fair, okay? It wasn't like somebody came in and just said, okay, I'll just take this piece, you take that piece, and it wasn't a shake of the hands. It wasn't like that. It was forcibly imposed over one group of people who had been living there for a long time. And that's not unique to Israel and the formation of Israel, but it is unique in that territory in recent history. And so, no, I don't think that anybody should prevent any group from having self-determination. The question is where, when, how, and at whose expense. At whose expense. I hope that's fair. And I often like to say that, if it was flipped, if the script was flipped 180 degrees, and there were some a large. This is kind of hard to imagine, but imagine if the region had been populated mostly by historically by Jewish natives and nation states or regions that define themselves as primarily Jewish, not entirely, but mostly, and a small Arab state was granted by an international body after a victorious country after a world war had a mandate over it, and they kicked out a bunch of people who were Jewish for no fault of their own. They just happened to be living there for multiple generations. They weren't attacking the other people while they lived there, and that wouldn't be fair to them. And then you might say, well, don't Arabs have a right to self-determination? Yeah, they do, but at what expense to whom? You see the logic there? It's the same exact logic. And the point is, this is the problem that I have. This is just me speaking personally. What makes me the angriest about what has happened is not the fact that it happened, because I'm not Palestinian and I understand these things do happen. What makes me the angriest is the behavior of Israel, especially subsequent to 1967, and what it's done to quote unquote maintain its security, which I believe is unforgivable and indefensible under the best. You cannot logically defend what Israel has done and continues to do, by the way, in terms of letting settlers come in and terrorize people, taking their land, bulldozing their homes. I mean, like I said, I could spend an hour. We couldn't even cover a fraction of what they do. It's so bad. It's really bad. And I try to use the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would want to have done unto you. Would you want to have somebody bulldozing your house? Would you want to have somebody pouring cement in your water well? Would you want to have somebody spraying, sewer water on your home? What does that have to do with security? So those kind of things really upset me. But no, I'm not against Jewish people having a place safe to be. Of course, that's more than reasonable. But if you're going to make your self-determination, any group, not just Jewish people, if you're going to make your self-determination, to your benefit, but you're not going to have much of a concern of who you harm along the way, whether it's in the United States or North America or anywhere. And it's happened a lot. It doesn't make it right in any situation. And this I can't change what happened in the 1800s with the U.S. westward expansion and manifest destiny. I can't go back and change time. What's happening right now in modern history, is happening right now. The Israeli government and Zionist project continues to settle and settle and settle more and more land in territory they claim was theirs because of a war they won, which was a war that Israel started. Israel started that war. They claimed preemption, but they started the war. The U.S. claimed preemption in Iraq. The U.S. started that war. The Iraqis weren't a threat to the United States. The U.S. claimed they were on dubious premises of having these weapons. And Israel claimed it had a right to attack its neighboring nations because it felt that the neighboring countries might attack it. Okay, well, yeah, but that's bullshit because they didn't. If somebody attacks you and you fight back, and in the course of fighting back, you take territory, okay, fair enough. That's conquering territory under a legitimate defensive war. If you look at your neighbor and go, boy, they're doing exercises a lot more than I'd like them to right now. They're talking about they're doing a lot of saber rattling, a lot of political conversation. I think I'll attack first because I have a very no. That's not considered a defensive war. So I guarantee you this: if somebody in Israel right now, if Israel was attacked by 6 or 7 nations at once, and the reason they justified it was because they thought they saw the Israeli military doing drills. The Israelis, people from Israel would be crying, "Oh my God, you're attacking us! You're offensively taking our territory." But why can't the same standard apply to both situations? 67 was not started by the Arab states. You have to understand the history of this to understand when you make statements like that. Now, what the Israeli civilians and people who support Israel around the world are told over and over again, that they started it, we finished it, right? They started the war. Everything we've ever done has been defensive. We have a stronger army. We deserve whatever we get. It's war, tough luck, deal with it, right? That's what you hear. There's only one problem with that story. It's not true. The other story is it was a land without a people for a people without a land, right? These common phrases. There was not a land without a people. There were a lot of people in that land. And to say you kind of just moved in and just kind of drew a line and said, okay, we'll stay on this side, you guys go over. It wasn't like that. It was violent, it was brutal, and nobody had the right to do that. It was done illegally and immorally, and it shouldn't have happened. And what should happen to correct it, in my opinion, and people call this the one state solution, I think it should be one region. You can call it whatever the fuck you want. But the Zionist mentality, the idea of supremacy and expansion and the right to the land, that has to go away. That's a bullshit mentality. And what should happen is people can live in that region together. They can be Arab, they can be Jewish, they can be whatever. They can practice Islam, they can practice Judaism, they can practice Christianity. Who cares? Do your thing. Be peaceful, be a part of a democracy, and live your life. Don't have an ethno state that tells everybody else they can't be there and they have to be subservient to your will and your belief and that you're supreme. And that's the problem with Zionism, is that it believes that crap. And it puts the needs and desires of one group ahead of everyone else. And that's why people like me find it objectionable. It doesn't matter who's doing it. It's the attitude, the arrogance, the hubris, and the lack of concern for anybody else. The way that Israel has decided to go about comporting itself in the last 75 years is not conducive for peace at all, never will be. Now, you can blame the need for security concerns on the attacks that have happened. I can see that point of view, but it's stimulus response. If you put somebody in an oppressive situation, I had a great conversation yesterday with this lady named Poker, somebody or other, and we talked about this. And so I mentioned two previous conflicts with which she was familiar. And I asked her, I said, was it the right of the U.S. colonists who were colonized and basically occupied by the British, was it their right when they exhausted peaceful opportunities to take up arms and try to fight their oppressor? She said, of course. I said, well, in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa, was it reasonable and justifiable for the larger population, which was the majority population of black Africans, who were being basically controlled by and run by a smaller group of white South Africans? Was it fair for them, after they've exhausted peaceful means, to resist their oppressor with force? She's like, yeah, of course. I said, okay, well, in Palestine, where you have people that are being ruthlessly oppressed and occupied by the Israeli military, is it fair for them to resist their oppressor? She said, well, we got to do what we got to do. 10-7 happened, all bets are off. How do you make that leap? How can you bypass the logic? I understand when it's your group doing the oppression, it's hard to acknowledge it and admit to it, but you have to have the same standard across the board. So that's all I'm asking. No one wants you to do anything crazy. We don't want you to lay down your arms and go into the sea and die. That's not what people think at all. That's what's always said, because it's used as sort of a counterbalancing wall. This is what the Ben Shapiros of the world say. If H group laid down their arms and released the hostages, there'd be peace. If Israel lays down its arms, you're going to have every Jew slaughtered, right? That's what we hear. That is a ton of bullshit. That's a crock of shit. People don't hate Jewish people. Nobody cares that you're Jewish or of Jewish ethnicity. Who gives a shit? You know what they care about? Not being brutalized, not having land that their families have lived on for, hundreds of years be arbitrarily taken from them, have them moved off with force, unalived, massacred, whatever it may have been. That's not okay. People don't get angry because they hate you for who you are. They get angry because of what you have done to them. If you wrong somebody, they're not going to like you too much, right? That's common sense. So yesterday I asked that specific question. I says, what do you think motivated the formation of groups like the H group? Why would they form? Why would they form? And she kept saying it's because everybody hates the Jews. Everybody wants the Jews dead. That's what she said. And I said, okay, that's a possibility. What other possibilities are there? She goes, that's got to be it. I said, no, it doesn't have to be it. This is the part that I think people just can't get their head past when it comes to supporting the Israeli side. They lean back on that issue saying, well, everybody just hates us. They play this sort of permanent victimization card. Well, they have all this other land in the region. Why can't we have our little sliver? Why don't they just leave us alone? Dude, you're not leaving them alone. The physical geographic territory may not be that large, but you're nuclear armed. You have the largest military in the region. You're backed by the biggest superpower that's ever existed, financially, militarily, politically. You're not some little, innocent little duckling in the corner being squashed by people. You're doing the squashing. And then somehow if anybody in the face of all that persecution decides they're going to try anything to get out from under it, oh my God, I can't believe that. How dare you? You're a terrorist. It's the same language that was used against the American colonists when the British were trying to, keep their reign over the colonists, and they dared to do anything to resist. Guess what they called them? They called them terrorists, just because they wouldn't stand in the face of the redcoats and lose, because they didn't have the weapons, they didn't have the people, they didn't have the equipment. That's called asymmetric warfare. So usually the one on the less powerful side has to use guerrilla tactics. And you can refer to what happened up. Again, I heard a Dr. Phil segment. Did anybody see that Dr. Phil segment? He had somebody on who was pro-Palestinian. And man, they were just giving these people, I was so angry at how Dr. Phil ran this segment. He was browbeating them, telling them that there's under no circumstances is what happened on 10. Listen, I'm not justifying the tactics as far as civilians that were harmed. But the fact that there's no justification for what happened on 10/7, are you kidding me? Breaking out of a border that someone's controlling every portion of your life is not a crazy idea. Somebody has you walled in, you can't leave. They're controlling what comes in and out. They control the people, the air, the land, the water. They tell you you can't have chocolate. Who the fuck are the Israelis to tell the people of the occupied territories or Gaza you can't have chocolate, right? That's a silly example, but that gives you a good example of the kind of control, and it's so much bigger than just that. And then we hear these arrogant statements like this: "Well, look what Israel's done. Look how beautiful our development's been, and look at these Arabs. They haven't done anything with their." Yeah, give me a break. If somebody were to control what comes in and out of your territory, and periodically comes in and mows the lawn and terrorizes your people and has military weapons pointing at you all the time, what kind of development could you do? Checkpoints, the whole 9 yards. It's such an arrogant thing to say. I can't stand how arrogant, as if people who are Arab can't do anything because they're like inferior human beings. Every group of people has smart people. If you look at the people of Gaza alone, they're incredibly well-educated people. Their population is incredible, despite the circumstances in which they find themselves. So I just find those. This is what it gets back to. It's this arrogant, dismissive superiority complex that we the Jews, God gave us the land, and these inferior Arabs are dirty. Like Ben Shapiro said, he goes, Jews like to build things, Arabs like to blow stuff up and play in raw sewage. That's what the guy said. That right there, that statement right there, that was on Twitter. That tweet encompasses, of course, very, very vicious language, the general mindset of most people in Israel vis-a-vis Arabs, especially Palestinian Arabs. And that's unfortunate. And yet all people claim is that everybody hates the Jews and it's all anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's anti-Arab Palestinian in most cases. Now, there are people in the Israeli population, I've heard them speak, and I think they're earnest and sincere, that they sincerely want peace. They literally want to have whatever peaceful outcome can leave people peaceful. Yeah, I agree. And that's fair. But to support a nation state that makes it impossible for there to be peace, because if you offer somebody lunch and you put a couple of piles of dog shit between two pieces of bread and say, here's lunch, you want to have some lunch? And they're like, I don't think I want that. Like, what do you don't like food? You ingracious person, why won't you accept my kind offer? You're like, dude, no one would accept that sandwich. Well, you're not doing it because you're not peaceful. You're an Arab. We've offered you peace 5 times, and every time you've just said no because you're violent. Give me a break. You wouldn't want that sandwich either, would you? I don't want that sandwich. For somebody to have an opportunity for autonomy and dignity, they need to have the ability to be free from the control of another. And let's face it, in any of these arrangements that Israel has talked about over the decades, none of them have been fully autonomous. And if that's the whole point of your aspiration, and somebody offers you a deal that's absent that, you can't say no, you can't say yes to that. Right? I don't think anybody would say that. It's crazy. They expect otherwise. So the other thing I hate to hear is everything was just fine on 10/6. We were being peaceful. They attacked us. Therefore, we're going to finish this once and for all. No, it wasn't fine on 10/6. You may have been fine on the beach in Tel Aviv, sipping your whatever, or having your boyfriend with that rainbow flag, or whatever the hell you were doing. But that was not the case for others. Others were suffering under oppression. You can't live a very comfortable, free, enjoyable life with all the benefits of being somewhere while your government keeps another group next door under their thumb and has them living under miserable conditions. You can, but here's what's going to happen. You shouldn't be surprised at all if the people to whom you're doing these things decide, enough. And I'm not for that happening, by the way. I'm not for anybody being hurt. But to be clear, it is absolutely ridiculously unrealistic to oppress people, 10, 15, 20 miles away from you. And when they finally rise up to go, oh my God, these people aren't peaceful. Yeah, they're peaceful. Why do they say finish the job? I think the point that they're trying to make, this is what Nikki Haley said, finish them. And I believe it's a statement geared towards the H group or militancy. That's being generous. Now, unfortunately, I think what's actually played out in the response has been a situation where it sort of opened up the door for a variety of approaches, which could, from their point of view, could be justifiable. And so they've used that window as an opportunity to take liberties that I think under normal circumstances could not have been justified. That's another reason why I believe some of the most egregious claims for that day, the atrocities that were the most shocking to people, were emphasized over and over again without direct evidence, especially the babies thing, but it just goes on and on. Now, I've been highly criticized for saying that I can't fully verify stuff, and that the UN report that came out about the widespread use of SA on that day proved it. It did not prove it. It said some of the circumstantial evidence indicates that there is a likelihood that some of this occurred. They didn't say widespread. It wasn't a tactic or tool used systematically to affect the population, but they're not sure if anything didn't happen because there are two cases where they couldn't confirm, one especially that looked the most plausible. We've also spent enough time in higher ed. And I've seen the photograph of the person who was unfortunately no longer alive, who, listen, a reasonable person seeing that photograph and understanding the context would probably look at that and say, yeah, that probably did happen. I can't say for sure that it did, but you'd be hard pressed to deny it and be reasonable, right? But I don't know who did it. And the other thing you have to remember is during that day, a bunch of civilians from Gaza poured over that weren't necessarily members of the militant group. And listen, if I was an Israeli, you could say, well, it would have never happened had they not breached the fence, right? So you can't, it's the H group's fault no matter what. It's important to note that if the command structure that ordered that operation, if they specifically directed, this is where intent comes in and complicity among leadership. If they specifically said to the soldiers, go do this and do this and do that as much as you can, then yes, that's a war crime because that shows intent and structure. But even if it was one of the H group members who did that, that's not considered intent. No more than it would be if an Israeli soldier did something to a Palestinian woman that was an intent given from the entire leadership. I don't think the command structure said, go into North Gaza and do A, B, C, D, and E. They probably were told to go in and do A, and B, maybe C. But just because someone else in the outfit does D or E doesn't mean that the leadership ordered it. Now, the one thing I will say about the Israeli system, in terms of the Israeli forces, it's an incredibly permissive rules of engagement. What do I mean by that? I was in the armed forces, and in every conflict, you have rules of engagement. For example, you might be under strict orders to not fire unless someone fires at you first. That's a rule of engagement. Well, the rules of engagement are very, 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 they provide a lot of latitude in the Israeli military. So, for example, let's say you're in a situation where there are three people who are not wearing shirts, who are waving a white flag, and you're under instructions to engage first rather than being more careful about who you're targeting. If that's the general rule of engagement, err on the side of just eliminating targets. Well, that's what results in people who are innocent being harmed. And that's the nicest way to put it. And I do believe in some units, this happened. I know someone who served in Iraq, and I'm not proud to share this, but they were told pretty much the same thing. This is why so many poor Iraqis died. And a lot of these guys that were serving in Iraq from the United States side looked at it as if it's us or them. So it'd be better for us to shoot first and ask questions later than to sort of be really careful. It's just not the way it works in war. But once you've identified and you have clarity, or someone warns you ahead of time of what something's going to be, then you have to be more careful. A different standard would be applied. And for example, with that girl Hind we talked about, who when the ambulance showed up, they just blasted it. And with the aid workers, they just blasted away, not once, not twice, but 3 different vehicles. That's not showing caution. That's not showing taking proper concern and, I would say reasonable steps to avoid civilian casualties. All we hear, though, what do we hear all the time? Israel is the most moral army in the world. We go out of our way to avoid. No army does what we do. Yeah, give me a break. Give me a break. Daganos, listen, you've made comments like this. You say, in general, stop lying. Okay, so why don't we focus on one of the things that I've said, Daganos, instead of a general condemnation of what I'm saying. And listen, Daganos, just to let you know, I would much rather be saying respectable things like, boy, I tell you what, in a very difficult set of circumstances with tunnels and guerrilla warfare, even if I disagree with the Israelis' overall, in terms of their overall mission in terms of Zionism, I have to give them props. They did the right thing. They operated in a way that really did reduce. I would say it. I would say it. You have my word, because it just is what it is. It's observable. But when someone doesn't do that, and they show at best a callous disregard for the lives of their quote unquote enemy, and they conflate the civilians on the other side, as many Israeli officials have said, there are no innocents in Gaza. No one's innocent. Civilians are just part of the problem. There was a rabbi I listened to today that was giving a podcast interview to these two young Israeli journalists, and he said pretty much the same thing. He says, not even an infant is considered innocent unless they leave the area. I think to myself, what the hell is this guy talking about? He says that young people, women, they're all considered part of the enemy, and they're fully engageable unless they somehow identify themselves. And the two ways they can do that, one is by leaving, or one is by literally being captured, like surrendering and walking out with your hands. So are they going to capture all 2.2 million people? And anybody who doesn't want to be captured and live their lives are a legitimate military target? That's complete insanity. Jesus, man. So I've said this over and over again, Diagnose. I would love nothing more than to say something positive about what the IDF does or what the government chooses to do. Why don't they give us something to work with, for Christ's sakes? If the Israelis had come in, I know this is difficult, it's costly, it's challenging. I'm not saying that the war situation is not next to impossible. You have a deeply entrenched enemy who can, if they choose to, blend in with civilians. I'm not saying they do, but they can, which can make it tougher to discern. That's fair. And there are these tunnel systems, which makes it incredibly hard to kind of root them out. And they can come up and engage your soldiers, in many cases before you even know what's happening. And then they go back down, and you have no way of getting them through the tunnels. It's very difficult to. Listen, I get it. It's incredible. It's a bad set of circumstances for an invading army. But still, if you're going to try to justify, indiscriminate bombing because your attitude basically is that the people don't matter, and therefore they voted for them, 18 years ago, so be it. They all have to pay the price. That's a callous disregard for life at best. And what seems to most people, because of smartphones and pictures and video, to be an intent to unalive civilians, children. In no conflict in recent history have so many children been killed, so many journalists been killed, so many aid workers been killed. This is all very disproportionate. And because it's such a densely populated area, you have to be even more careful. You can't just say, and by the way, the AI systems, this has been coming to light lately. The AI systems that have been deployed, now the algorithms that have been used to program them have been coming to light. So, hey, Diagnose, listen to this. This is important for you to hear. So it turns out the calculations that were being made by the software was something as follows. If it's a low-level militant, then up to 10 to 15 civilians could be unalived with that person if the target was deemed to be a low level. If it's a mid-level, 30 to 50. And a high level, 4 to 600. That's the inputs that they put into their AI targeting systems. That's not legal warfare according to the Geneva Convention. You can't, imagine this right now, Dago. Let's just take this for example. Someone goes into a shopping mall in Tel Aviv and they take the store manager hostage. And let's say it's a very well-wanted criminal. And so instead of trying to negotiate or wait out, they just decide, okay, we're going to send a fighter jet, or we're going to drop a 2,000-pound bomb, and we're going to kill 340 shoppers in the mall to get the 1 million. You say that was crazy. That's insane. But somehow, Israel justifies what it does by some logic that I can't quite get my head around. And so that's what people have a problem with. And this, listen, even under the best of circumstances, if you try to justify this, you get onto a debate stage, you make it sound like you're justified, whatever. The public opinion is what matters most at this point. And like it or not, if you're Israeli or you're pro-Israeli, you are losing. You are losing, and I mean really losing, the battle for public opinion. I mean, in ways that you cannot even imagine. It is so out of control. And here's the problem. Just like South Africa had an indefensible structure in terms of its behavior, and eventually what happened was the international community just made a concerted effort to starve it out by sanctioning the crap out of it, isolating it until there was change. That's exactly what's going to happen with Israel. Exactly the same thing. Now, you may disagree and think that you're untouchable, you're invincible, and nothing will ever change. Everything changes, always, at some point. And I think right now Israel has the upper hand because it has the support of the United States. You have a lot of, unfortunately, and uninformed Americans, although many more have come to see the light after watching these social media apps. But still, I think like 58% of Americans support Israel, which is concerning. But it's not surprising because of the propaganda systems and the way that certain groups try to control the message. But that's going to change. Listen, you can't hide the truth forever. And so you can try to twist whatever story you want. You can try to tell the public it's A, B, and C. But when they're seeing D and E in front of their eyes, 70, 80, 100 days in a row, people are like, no, listen, man, maybe the first couple, but no, you can't do this over and over and over and, just bodies everywhere and then somehow try to explain your way out of that. Just there's no way to do it. So if that's lying, ask some people, ask anybody under the age of 30 right now what they think. Go ask 500 people and see how many people say that they support Israel with what they're doing in Gaza. And there was probably a lot of sympathy for Israel after what happened on 10/7. There must have been. There was for America after 9/11. And then what did our country do? We went in and pummeled the shit out of countries that had nothing to do with it, unalived so many people, it's absurd. A disproportionate, erratic response. And very similarly, Israel's doing the same thing. The same exact thing. And, the public eventually sees through the headlines and the bullshit, and they believe their own two eyes over what someone's telling them on a news program. So, Diagonos, I know you've been in my lives quite a bit. If you want to come up and talk, you've never once done it. I don't even know if you're real. Maybe you're just a really sophisticated bot. But the biggest slogan, I think, that if Israel was going to be honest, the slogan should be Israel trying to defend the indefensible since 1948. That's what I believe the slogan of Israel should be, because you can't defend indefensible behavior. And all you have to do, this is very simple, all you have to do to see this in the way you think is correct is put yourself in the shoes of the people involved during the foundation of Israel. If you're on the side that got territory given to you by an arbitrary decision by a group that was in charge of a land for a period with people living in it, your group got something, other people lost a ton. So all you have to do is put yourself on the side that lost a ton and go, would I like that if that happened to me? Of course not. Any decent human should have supported, the freedom and liberation of people under the crazy people in World War II, and as do I. And I also support the freedom and liberation of those living under Israeli occupation now and before. It's called being consistent. Just because your side is able to maintain the position of power and then project your power onto another and oppress them doesn't somehow now make it okay. And if you're going to condemn what happened on 10/7 or other attacks, you have to condemn the captives in the Warsaw Ghetto. You can't have it both ways. You have to be morally and intellectually consistent. Either you condemn uprisings in all forms or you don't. Somebody says here, you are the wrong side, Chip. You know what? It's possible that I'm on the wrong side. I'm not going to say that there's any kind of ultimate barometer on truth. These are different conclusions and takes on the same set of historical circumstances. Now, I've heard the arguments from those who believe that they're on the right side. I understand the arguments quite well. I'm respectful towards those who share those arguments. I disagree with those arguments because I don't think they're strong enough to overcome the other arguments. And all I have to ask anybody who says I'm on the wrong side is, how would you like to be on the side that you're opposing right now? If you'd like to live that life experience of being under the thumb of a more powerful group, having your land taken from your relatives, being forced to be a refugee, being starved, shot, injured, occupied, checkpoints everywhere, your life is made miserable, having your water wells with cement poured into, people coming down and burning your crops, cutting down your 100-year-old olive trees, stealing your homes. Are you saying that that I'm on the wrong side of that? You're okay with that? I think that's probably the mirror pointing in the wrong direction. And I don't know where your moral compass is, but I'm not okay with that to any group, including Jewish people in World War II and elsewhere, and not to Palestinian Arabs in the modern era. Same exact logic, same thing down the middle. So, yeah, I'll take that. If that's wrong, I'll be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong in that case. And to somehow claim that God, that the people who have done all these things, it's justifiable because God's on their side, or their God, as they believe it, gave something to them, and that other people have taken it from them in the distant past. They're just reclaiming what was theirs. Come on, man. I could use the same argument right now. If I was a Sioux Indian, I could go to somebody's home in New Jersey or Connecticut and say, I tell you what, man, 194 years ago, my tribe lived here. And granted, I know you have a nice life here, but tough luck. Where are your keys? You got to go. And you're like, what? Like, I'm not going anywhere. And then, of course, they come back with the appropriate accompaniments, and you decide you're going to leave because your neighbors just got put 6 feet under. And the modern history, this conflict did not begin on October 7th. That's the other fallacy. The latest chapter of this conflict, and this was repeated by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He said, while the attacks on 10/7 were horrific, which I believe they were, they did not happen in a vacuum. And people got really angry when he said that, like, oh, no, this is what Dr. Phil said. Nothing could justify the attacks of 10/7. Listen, I can't tell somebody who's under oppression what they can and can't do. In fact, the international community has said very clearly that people who are living under blockade or oppression or occupation have a right to resist by any means available. It doesn't say you have to only throw a rock and then get put under administrative detention for 25 years. It doesn't say you have to sit there and wave a flag and get shot at by snipers and take it. It says that you can fight back. Now, you're entitled to your point of view, and if you want to come up and speak to your issue, and I'll listen to you politely and have you make your point, we can let people in the audience decide if they believe that your argument is more persuasive, if they think that, and invite all your friends or whomever you think would balance the audience out. I'm not looking to try to take any kind of advantage from you. But if you believe that your argument's more persuasive, come up and share it with us. I will listen to every word you have to say. I was really open yesterday. We were talking a lot about, and this is very sensitive, I acknowledge this, but some of the allegations of the most egregious atrocities that happened on 10/7 that have been amplified relentlessly by the Israeli public relations system. They've claimed to the world that everything is proven, that it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. It happened. They talked about children having their hands twist tied together and lined up and then having petrol drenched on them, and then, of course, the lighter. That's what we've heard. They said it happened to 20 children in one place. And in the entire community during that event, that unfortunate day, where tanks from the Israeli IDF came in and blasted homes, which caused fires, there were a total of 6 children in that entire kibbutzim that were unalive. So there couldn't have been 20 little kids tied together in a group and lit on fire. It's the evidence. The evidence does not back up the claims. This has happened over and over and over, and from the 40 babies right on down the line. Now, it's unfair for anybody to say with complete certainty that nothing happened. That's also irresponsible to say. But when I've juxtaposed those two things in pro-Israeli lives, and I've said very clearly, hey, I just don't know for sure. And it would be irresponsible for anybody, absent some sort of persuasive or convincing evidence, to make a firm claim one way or the other, which I believe it's irresponsible for the Israelis to project these horrendous atrocities, which enrage people. Oh, this is what got Dr. Phil so mad. He made a comment about you can't come in and burn a baby or some shit like this. Well, that probably didn't happen. Nobody did it proactively. If a tank comes in from an Israeli military attack and it attacks a kibbutzim and it blasts a home or a structure 4 or 5 times with tank shells, it's going to cause some incendiary activity to happen. That doesn't mean somebody intentionally did that to an infant, but that's the claim that gets extrapolated from that action. That's what I think is unfair. It's not unfair to point out that none of this wouldn't have happened if the attack hadn't happened. That's a fair thing to say. But to condemn somebody or call them evil because they won't acknowledge uncorroborated information is, I think, a step too far. And like I said, it may have happened. And so I've tried to be very open-minded about this and say, hey, I've probably done this maybe 40 times with people on lives who have said, there's definite evidence. Okay, here's my Telegram address, here's my email address. If there's servers, you want, tell me where to go, tell me where to find it. And I've also listened to journalists who have seen the footage that was presented by the IDF to a select bunch of journalists. And what the Israelis have said was that journalists left feeling disgusted and sick in their stomach. And therefore, that tells you that everything they've said happened. But that doesn't tell you that. It tells you that what they did see made them sick. And what they did see was what the IDF was willing to show them. And if there was persuasive evidence of the things they've claimed, guess what would have happened? They would have shown it, or at least in some way indicated it was some sort of evidentiary fashion. But because the presentation of that, and listen, it doesn't make any of it good, it just doesn't make the most egregious versions of that story provable. There's no evidence to substantiate the claims. And that makes it difficult to just say, okay, well, yeah, I agree with you, it happened. And to be proactively condemned for not automatically accepting someone's versions of the event as fact or truth is not a fair standard to hold any of us to. Somebody says, I was muted when I asked about the interview with head of Zaka. Yeah, the head of Zaka, if you don't know who Zaka is, it's sort of this emergency response group or whatever. It's almost like FEMA for the United States kind of thing. And the head of Zaka lied repeatedly, making these outrageous claims of what he saw that day. And then when the interviewer asked him for proof, the one he really said that was most egregious was he said there was a pregnant woman, an Israeli, who had been unalived and that her belly area had been opened and that they had taken out the what and they'd put taken a something and stuck it into the thing. That's what he said. And then he said, I have pictures of it. And the guy said, okay, well, do you mind showing it to me? He goes, I can't show it to the camera. Do you mind just showing me the interview? He's like, sure. So he goes and grabs his phone, comes back, and he points to this floor. And he says, look, there it is. The guy's like, well, there's no person there. He's like, well, that's the after effect. Well, where's the evidence of what you just said? Well, we didn't think at the time to take pictures of it. Well, you just told me you had a picture of it. Well, I showed you a picture of the area. Now, what in the hell is somebody supposed to do with that? When somebody says to you, I have the evidence, here are the receipts right here, come check this out. You look at it, you're like, dude, that could be taken on any floor where some kind of something happened. Like, it doesn't show you any indicative proof of what you're claiming. That's the problem. And I think until somebody does show some of that evidence, I think it's unfair for us to be told that we have to accept it as it is. Now, the other thing I'm curious about, I've heard this, I've heard a lot of different things about this day, so I don't know if anybody's more clear about this than I am. Come on up and tell me, or share the. No, you can email me, chipbarnesonline@gmail. But I've heard conflicting reports about how many civilians and by whom. And I initially assumed it was a lot more that was done by the H group. I'm trying to be fair and not be too limiting, but I'm starting to have some real questions about that. The more evidence that's come to light, and the more testimony that's been given by Israelis who live inside of the kibbutzim and who are at the festival, seem to indicate that a good number, I don't know exactly what that number is, but a good number of these casualties are probably attributable to the response and not by the militants. The militants seem primarily motivated to go and get hostages and take them back for leverage. And here's an indication of that. Okay, there was a recording done in Arabic that I saw the translation of, and it's the fighters said, "Save your ammo for soldiers." Save your ammo for soldiers, meaning don't fire at civilian vehicles, don't fire at civilians. Save your ammo to engage the military. And in many cases, not all, but in most cases, the engagements that I've seen on video have been against soldiers. So we're not sure, but to make a claim that everything was automatically the H group under all circumstances and there's no conversation to be had, I think is insane. Now, there have been third parties that have tried to investigate this. They've tried their hardest to work with the Israeli authorities to get to the bottom of it because they want to find out what happened. They're not looking to try to take a side and say, well, they're not looking to protect the H group for God's sakes. But they've been denied at every turn. And guess why that probably is? If somebody denies you access to the evidence they're sharing, what do you think that says about them? Yeah, we have the proof. Trust us. But well, can we see it? No, you can't see it. No. Well, we want to cooperate and get this out to the public. We want to be, nope, sorry, not going to do it. National security, whatever. So I don't want to overharp on that. Listen, if I were Israeli and any of that stuff happened, I'd be furious. I'd be absolutely furious. So in that regard, I get it. But if you're going to make really egregious claims like this, you have to bring it. You can't just make those claims and expect the world to say, okay, sure. And so I was talking to somebody yesterday named Moroccan Zionist, and he was saying that the UN report definitively proved that it happened. If you look at the footnotes of the report, it specifically says is that the evidence utilized to compile this report was circumstantial in nature. And while Likely some SA activities occurred on this date. The evidence is circumstantial. There's one report, like I said, of a woman who looks like she might have had something bad happen to her in terms of that type of thing. But that's all that report said in terms of evidence. And again, if it did happen, I don't want to be insensitive. If it did happen, let's get it corroborated and let's get it out in the public. Let's say, okay, this happened. Let's just get it out there and condemn it for what it is. But the games that are being played along the way make it harder to just say, okay, sure, I got you. This happened. Why would they do? Yeah, well, the thing is, in terms of a war like that, too, it's not that easy when you have the adrenaline running through you and people are shooting back at you to stop and go, I know what I'll do. It's not that simple. And some of the timelines that were established with respect to the accusations just don't make any sense from a physics standpoint. And then, of course, there are family members who the Israelis said their daughter was SA'd, and the family says, no, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. That's not what happened. So anyway, it's just very frustrating. But it is what it is. Anyway, if you're somebody who sees it differently and you want to come up and make the case, if we're missing the information, if we're, like Dagono says, we're getting it all wrong, or we're lying, come up and set us straight, please. Please. Somebody says that what I saw. Yeah, the other thing I've heard was that on television, that everybody knows this happened because they all saw it on television. That's what I've heard. Everybody saw it. It was on the news. It's hard for me to believe that stuff that was on the news was not recorded by a single human being or the news station or the military. So if it was broadcast live, if the evidence that people referred to was broadcast live and the whole country saw it, you're telling me that not one person recorded it? There's no evidence to show others? It's just we have to take the word. Oh, we saw it on TV. Don't question us. Come on. As a combat vet, I'd love to sign up against Palestine. Well, it's okay. You can do whatever you want. If you want to go try to join the IDF, I'm sure they'd like to have the help. But think about that before you say it, because a lot of people who make such statements like that, unfortunately, are making it void of a lot of information that they may not make that statement based on. So I think it's Boyd Anderson 455. Boyd, here's what I'd invite you to do first before you go sacrifice your life and try to take on a cause that you're not totally sure about. Do some research, my friend. You'll probably find that the information that you've based this statement on is not inclusive. And if you learn the full context and the backstory, you probably feel a lot differently about it. Even with the American system, it's the same way, Boyd. Do you think that the Iraqis deserve to have the U.S. invasion? Did you volunteer to go fight the Iraqis because you were all angry at the fact that they have WMD, only to find out that the soldiers were duped? Many came home and threw their medals away and they were disgusted. Do you know people who served in Vietnam who were told they had to go over there to contain communism? It was called the domino theory. And they went over and killed 2 million Vietnamese. And 58,000 plus Americans died. For what? To withdraw 6 years later with the defeat, tail between the legs? Do you think those are good wars to fight in, Boyd? Well, maybe you might want to take a second to take a closer look at this one before you step up into that void and say, I'm a gung-ho American. I want to go fight this other. It sounds like Bruce Willis when he told President Bush he wanted to go fight in all this. It's that sort of silly bravado that people project. It says, I want to go be. Listen, if you want to go volunteer for a WAR, you better make sure it's got the right premise to it, or you're sacrificing your life and you're a moron. And I don't want to see anybody lose their life in combat or even civilians. But if you're going to do it for a just cause, not for a moronic take on something you have no clue about. So, from a veteran to a veteran, I'm willing to even get on the phone with you and bring you up to speed on the very specifics upon which I base this feedback. Okay, Boyd? By the way, you don't have to be mean to Boyd. I'm trying to share with Boyd the fact that, and Boyd's entitled to his opinion, obviously. I mean, if Boyd wants to go sign up with the IDF and go lose his life over something as silly as this, let him. But I'm just trying to mention the fact that most combat situations, as they are described before they happen in the United States and elsewhere, are based on bullshit premises. And by the way, this is the other thing to share. It's nobody's fault, by the way. Most of us in the West, we get a very, very, very slanted version of the news, and these issues are not presented to us in their totality. The Ukraine war is a perfect example of this. So the backstory on this conflict, Boyd, is so important to understand. And what motivates, what would motivate you, Boyd, or me, or anybody, to go across a border, risk your life, and take on a much more formidable adversary? Why would you do that? You have to have a good reason to do it. Now, I would agree with you, Boyd, if it's simply based on hatred and abject desire to unalive people for no reason at all, yeah, I'm with you, like ISIS type shit. I'm with you. But that's not what this is. Although the people who did that are painted as they are that, but that's not, they're not on some sort of Islamic caliphate. In fact, if you look at the behavior of Muslim countries, quote unquote, their behavior is way more peaceful than any of the Western behavior. Who are the aggressors who initiate these foreign wars, subvert foreign governments, kill millions of people? Are they, this is what Shahid Bolson talks about. Are these a bunch of Islamic, people roaming around? There were some people in northern Iraq and Syria that were deservedly taken down by the foreign powers. I think they should have been, but that's a small, teeny little sliver of a bunch of crazy, neurotic, radical Muslims. And so, if you want to hold those people to that standard, then you have to hold the entire American or Christian population to Timothy McVeigh. Should the entire Muslim world go attack the entire American or Christians around the world because of what Timothy McVeigh did or somebody like that? That's a teeny little sliver of a radical person. In fact, I was just talking this. The Western media has so successfully vilified Muslims around the world. The movies we see, it's always a Muslim terrorist, and these Muslim countries are vilified. That all they want to do is kind of enforce their religion. No, they don't. No, they don't. They could give a shit. They're welcoming to all people. People of all faiths live there. Their whole religion tells them they have to accept people of all faiths. So, but they've been vilified. And you've taken a group of people that have a whole system based on peace and love and kindness and twisted it and turned it upside down, blamed a few fanatics and painted the entire religion as this brutal, the Bill Maher's of the world, the Sam Harris of the world, these fucking morons that don't know jack shit. And yes, do I agree with some of the things the way women are treated? No, I don't agree with some of that. That's not my culture. But that's their culture. And it varies in degrees. Not every country has the same rules. Not every country has the same limits. Everything's not the same. It's not a monolith, right? You're talking about, 2 billion people. So anyway, I got to take a break for 1 sec. Hey, how you doing? This is Ruby. Which way back to the parking lot by Falls Road?
Um, you can go either way. It both that way and that way ties. The fastest way is go up here.
Uh-huh.
You see the yellow trail?
Yeah.
To an intersection.
Take a left.
To the left.
Okay.
Now I'll take you back into the right.
Appreciate that very much. Yeah, I was walking and talking so damn much that I kind of got to a trail that I'm not familiar with, so I had to ask somebody. Come on, Ruby, come on. Don't drink that damn water. That's the other problem. Our water in this country is disgustingly polluted. So yeah, I recommend anybody who's going to go get all gung ho and want to do all the old Rambo shit. And the other thing is, I don't know if Boyd ever got deployed. He said he was a veteran, but a lot of veterans aren't ever deployed to combat, and it's a much different experience being on a military base and training. I don't know what his specialty was, but most people aren't even training in combat arms. If you're in combat arms and you've trained, war is nothing like training. It's chaotic, it's violent, it's brutal, it's indiscriminate to who gets harmed. A piece of artillery doesn't decide what color uniform you have on it, just has a blast radius. So nobody should wish for combat. If you do, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And you can't even describe it until you experience it. It's the worst of the worst of the worst. That's why I always say, it's a good day if I'm not in a combat zone or behind bars somewhere. It's a great day, no matter what else is going on. Anyway, yeah, it's a real shame. And listen, I don't know much about Islam. People have been encouraging me. I'm trying not to get too heavily involved in any particular path on this because I don't want to be seen as someone who's taking sides necessarily because of my faith. I take the side I take because of the basic morality. And I think injustice is it needs to be called out. I understand the argument of the Israeli side saying they want to protect their security interests. I just think what the Israeli state does to achieve that goal is in many cases completely unnecessary, over the top, oppressive, brutal, murderous, and indicative of a bunch of people who don't care about the lives of others. And I think that's a real shame. And I wish that weren't the case. I don't believe that most Israelis are like that. I believe the governments of Israel and the hardcore proponents of Zionism that take the core tenets of Zionism and extend it to a level that it's harmful to others just past the initial founding of the state. And I think you have to. So yeah, Boyd says he's a frontline soldier. Yeah, good, Boyd. And I said I hope if you do go, if you decide to fight in conflict, be safe. I hope you make it out safe, like I did. And I don't know where he was deployed. Were you in either the Gulf War or the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War? I didn't see the comments since I wasn't looking. But listen, this is not about to disparage somebody for their service, whether you're combat or not. It's not. That's not what it's about. It's about being very careful to base your motivation of what you think is right until you know the full story. That's all I'm trying to say. And I would, I tell you, Boyd, if you want to do this, you can email me. Let's just pick $1,000 because I think that's a fair number, not a huge. I'll just take $1,000, and if you in 2 minutes or less can summarize the conflict in a way that's accurate, I'll just send you $1,000. Is that fair? So yeah, and thank you for your service too, First Gulf War. So you know what it's like. I was in the 3rd Armored Division. We were in the middle of the Saudi desert. We eventually deployed into the western portion of Iraq, engaged part of their military, and then swung back into Kuwait. We were by the oil fires for about 85 days, and then we went back to Saudi and flew back to Germany. It was not good. The combat was only 4.5 days of the entire experience, so the rest of the time was boring as hell. And it's the weirdest mix of complete boredom and adrenaline in ways you just can't put into words, and carnage. That's what war is. It's very strange. Hold on. Got to verify this live here. There we go. So yeah, but boy, you can take that offer. Email me. It's chipbarnesonline@gmail if you want to take me up on that. I don't expect anything from you in return except for not risking your life or saying things that are whatever you just said. I think that's a very poorly informed proclamation. But anyway, you're entitled to your beliefs, and so be it. But anyway, so it would be nice, and I think we're seeing a chapter right now where there's a lot of hesitancy on the part of the Israelis to continue their abject brutality. I think that some of this is actually catching up to them. And I think the United States has been putting more pressure on them to be very cautious with going into Rafah. But it still seems like the hardliners are hell-bent on doing it, obviously. And the other argument that I hear that makes me sick to my stomach is, why doesn't Egypt just open up the border and let them go, let them out? Like, just let them go to Egypt, right? Why should people living in a land have to leave the land? I mean, imagine the same statement. If Lebanon was on the border with Israel and Israel was under assault and completely barricaded in, and their civilians were at risk because of the conflict, because the militants were underground, and somebody said, hey, why don't you just open up Lebanon and all the Israelis can just go to Lebanon? What would you say to that? You're like, I'm not leaving my country, right? That's what you would say. What the hell do you think the Palestinians feel like? You think they're to Lebanon? What would you say to that? You're like, I'm not leaving my country, right? That's what you would say. What the hell do you think the Palestinians feel like? You think they're different from you? Would you say to that? You're like, I'm not leaving my country, right? That's what you would say. What the hell do you think the Palestinians feel like? You think they're different from you? Would you say to that? You're like, I'm not leaving my country, right? That's what you would say. What the hell do you think the Palestinians feel like? You think they're different from you? A hostage gets released. A hostage gets released. Every person in Palestinian jail that's held under administrative detention or is overcharged for petty crimes. Somebody says, Hermes drone 6 million of U.S. money brought down trying to read what you said here. It says Hermes drone, $6 million U.S. money. It was brought down in Lebanon. I think somebody's saying that the Lebanese or Hezbollah took down a very expensive drone in Lebanon today, if that's what I'm reading correctly. Yeah, listen, there's been all this proxy stuff going back and forth in Lebanon today, if that's what I'm reading correctly. Yeah, listen, there's been all this proxy stuff going back and forth. How can you debit card, call yourself rich? I don't understand. I'm not sure what you mean by that. It says, how can you live in debit card and call yourself rich? I have no idea what that means. No clue. Sorry, I don't speak that version of English. Yeah, it'll get better in a second. Give it a second. Give it 1 second. 1 second. Give it a second. It'll get there. Are you talking about the United States government living off a credit card? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Uh, H Group is not running Lebanon. Lebanon's very complicated. If you want to hear about Lebanon, we should have one of our esteemed members come up and talk about it. He's from there. He knows the history. He knows the politics. He knows the military. But I don't agree that I don't think that's a true statement that the Hezbollah group runs Lebanon. They're a factor, but they don't run the place. He kicked to shift the war to this. I tell you what, maybe it's me. Yeah, there's Federico. That's the person I wanted to talk to. I don't understand what exactly you just said there, Federico, though. I'm having a hard time understanding some of the comments. Yeah, I mean, Lawrence, I think the fair thing to do is to listen to somebody who's Lebanese, who's lived the experience, who's been around for, 40, 50 years and knows a little bit about the real realities there. And then let's tap into that first, and then we can start comparing, contrasting thoughts. That's fair. In fact, Federico, if you want to come up, if once we get to a better place, you can certainly weigh in on that if you'd like to. I think Federico's going to start doing some lives, which will be really interesting from the perspective of Lebanon. Too many lags. I'm trying to get to a better place. Okay, hold on. Lives, which will be really interesting from the perspective of Lebanon. Too many lags. I'm trying to get to a better place. Okay, hold on. Is that better now? Because I just reset my internet and I reset the live. No, I'm not at the Arctic. No, close. Can you hear me now? Can somebody let me know if you can hear me now? Please. Okay, good. Yeah, I reset my internet connection and I also restarted TikTok, so that should fix it. Sorry about that. What I was trying to say was Federico, who's a very knowledgeable person about Lebanese history, he grew up there. He actually, believe it or not, when the invasion in 1982 happened, if you don't know, Israel invaded and brutalized Lebanon in 1982 and occupied it. Um, you know, contrary to public opinion, people don't like being occupied. And when you're a young kid and you see your countrymen, you see your country invaded and people brutalize your population, unalive civilians, you do what you can to try to fight back. So he told me, I've heard him talk stories about taking oil, hot oil, and as the Israeli soldiers would come by in their armored vehicle, they would dump it from the rooftops down on top of the soldiers. I mean, what do you expect? Anybody who's going to be occupied is going to want to resist. That's just the way it is. To get mad at people for resisting occupation is an absurd thing to do. Okay, we lost a lot of. Here comes Federico.
Hey, Chip.
Hey,
Yeah, Lebanon is very complicated. Lebanon is a country, such a small country that has shifted all the Western plans for the Middle East. It's Lebanon, it's not only Lebanon. Lebanon is the events in Lebanon. It changed. You remember in 2006, Bush and Condoleezza, the new Middle East? What happened to the new Middle East? It never happened. And the war in Syria for that new Middle East and never happened. So Lebanon has a very important role into changing the whole narrative of the Middle East conflict. Politically, we still don't have a president because Lebanon, as much as is a small country, is like 10,425 kilometers. That means you can start running in the morning down south. You will be up north by night. And the good thing about Lebanon is diversity. We are diverse. We deal with our political views in many different ways. You got people supported from the west, people supported from the east, and no matter what, we went through a civil war. We learned from the civil war. We have 16 sectarian in Lebanon. You have a mosque, a church, and a synagogue next to each other. You have the atheists, you have the LGBT, you have everybody, but everybody respects. But when it comes to politics, unfortunately, during the Israeli occupation, the people that paid the price, I don't say the only people, because a lot of Lebanese knew what was going happening, and the people from the south paid a heavy price in their daily lives, in their lands, in their lives. So fighting the occupation, it wasn't easy. While the party was happening in Beirut, like you would have people raving in Beirut, getting drunk, while the resistance is fighting in the north, in the south. And they were able, from a couple of guys that started in 1982, to become the largest non-military force in the Middle East, and that is not through foreign dictation, but by foreign support and being wise and knowing. And when it comes to the H running Lebanon, if they were really running Lebanon, you would not hear all these Lebanese voices going out and speaking against them. That is for sure. That would be the second day they will disappear, like what happened during the Syrian presence in Lebanon. If you would speak something bad, the second day you're no longer around. Nobody sees you anymore. So the biggest proof to these people that says the H group run Lebanon, just go listen to Lebanese politicians. Everything happens in Lebanon is blamed on the H group, and they keep it quiet. They keep it quiet not because they're not able to take over the country and overflip everybody. They take it quietly because they believe it's a sacrifice that they have to do in order to maintain Lebanon of what Lebanon is today, which is diversity, democracy. We vote. For people to say that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, that is completely untrue. This, with all the problem that we have, we still more democracy than ever existed in Israel. Lebanon has been, although there is no warships around Lebanon, sanctioning Lebanon, we are going through the worst economic crisis that ever happened to a country. If you had money in the bank in Lebanon, it's gone. But it's not gone because H Group took it. It's gone because SWIFT system know exactly where it went. So if you look at it, if you transfer money from a country to another, you gotta do it through the SWIFT system. And if you do it through the SWIFT system, the United States of America know exactly how much from where to where. So if they want to say who stole the money from Lebanon, they can exactly tell you. But obviously, in regard of civil structure, the areas that H Group runs are very, social life is very organized. No one is in need. If you need help, you get the help. They get money from outside. They spend it on the infrastructure and on their people, while other Lebanese group, they take the money and they put it in the bank. Now, ruling Lebanon, it's not possible. No one rules Lebanon, and nobody changes Lebanon for what it is.
That big explosion that took place in Beirut, the one where the fertilizer, whatever factory storage location. What are your thoughts on that? Were there a lot of talk about who was responsible?
Israel. It's all connected to the canal, the Ben Gurion Canal. It's all connected to the port of Haifa. It's Lebanon is the access to the Arab countries from the Mediterranean Sea. So if they take out the Lebanese port, the second destination to this called to the Abrahamic Accord people is the closest access is Haifa, the port of Haifa. Who profit from it? Israel.
Yeah.
So and plus, if you follow the paper trail on these nitrate, they were left there on purpose through bureaucracy, because
Yeah.
some kind of material like this, Lebanese army so should take it over and store it safely. That is the responsibility of the Lebanese army. But the Lebanese,
Just real quick, how many people died in that? And by the way, there's somebody in the comments named Ron saying I didn't do a live about some topic, but I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So if somebody knows what that is, please write it in the comments and I'll address that. So how many people unalived in that explosion, that horrible explosion that took place?
two plus like almost 300. And the thing is, when it happened, usually at the month of August or during the summer, every Lebanese that lives in Beirut has a house in the mountain. So what happened when the school ends, everybody packed their stuff and they moved to their summer house and they live. So at the time that it happened, Beirut was basically empty.
Oh,
So the
wow.
people that got really hurt, yeah, the people that really got hurt is the people that were working in the port or the people that are around for that time of the year.
Yeah, just like Ron, I started on TikTok on October the 9th, which was 2 days after the 7th. So that happened well before then, as far as the explosion in Lebanon. I don't know if that's what Ron's talking about. I wanted to actually, because Federico knows, you know so much more about it than I do. So I was hoping to let his live sessions direct the talks about Lebanon, and then we can all learn from him.
Yeah, that the whole thing of that nitrate is the way it came to Lebanon, the way it was. You know, it wasn't the destination of that to be in Lebanon. But what happened, it was going to Burkina Faso from, I believe it was from an eastern country, I don't remember the name. And it stopped at the port of Beirut to load equipment. But somebody sued that boat and that they owe them money and they got a court order to confiscate the boat. And the guy that owns the boat did not pay the penalty or they didn't pay the money on that boat, and then it got confiscated, and then the boat started deteriorating, so they decided to unload that nitrate and put it in a storage in the port. So the whole thing, it's a show. It's a show that was put there waiting for the perfect timing to turn it off. H
Do
group
you,
has,
do you think, Frederick, this is a question for you. Do you think that
yeah.
what motivates the H group, Hezbollah, Iran, do you think it's based on an abject hatred of Jewish people?
No, absolutely. H group was formed after the Israeli invasion. It wasn't there
Are
before.
you saying absolutely yes or absolutely no?
Absolutely not.
Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. So
Absolutely not.
why do you think people claim that all of the overseeing is because of an abject hatred for Jewish people? Why do we keep hearing that?
I mean, I take you remember that lady you were speaking to yesterday, the lady that you did one-on-one with her, and
Poker.
yeah, you asked her something. You said you told her, how do you know? She told you, well, every time we go to Israel, they tell us, they show us. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So this is what they want them to believe. This is how they're being victimized. I honestly feel sorry for them. Like I wish there is something that you can give them that makes them make sense of life. It's only about them. It's only about everybody. Look in the past 60 years, how many Muslim was unalived and how many Jews was unalived? How many hate crime against Jews in the world and how many hate crime on Muslims in just look
Yeah.
at that statistic and you understand. I mean, like if that is really the case, there's some billion and billions of Muslims around the world, it would be chaos. The world would be chaos if that is the mentality.
Yeah, I wonder, but speaking of the person that I spoke with yesterday, I wonder why it always comes back to that. In other words, I think what she kept saying is that I think she means Jewish people, need to do whatever it takes for us. And I think there is a misperception that everyone's quote unquote out to get Jewish people, and that Israel is the only quote unquote sanctuary that provides for to prevent an otherwise horrific outcome for Jewish people. Do you think it's possible for people to coexist peacefully in that region? And in fact, do the periods between 1900 and 1930 maybe as an example of what that might look like?
I tell you, I show you how. I'm going to give you an example of how we are, even if we don't want to or whatever, but by religion, you have to look at the people that goes and burn Quran in the streets in so many countries, in Sweden, in Norway, in that why don't we see Muslim burning the Bible or the Torah? The simple fact that it is a sin for us to do so, even though you're doing the worst thing to my holy book. I cannot be like you, and we fight back when we're attacked. We're not like we don't go looking for conquer. And even if you look at the history of the Andalus, when the Muslim was ruling, they hired Jewish and Christians because they told him, hey, you know, we are not good at what you do. They did the paperwork, they did the financial, they did the investment, they did a lot of stuff, although it was financed by the Muslim, and they lived, and that's how the Jewish thrived during the Andalus. The golden era for the Jews was during the Andalus, and who was governing that era? The Muslims. Like how is that gonna turn around and become hate? We believe that there are cousins. The Jewish faith are the Arab's cousin, and I don't know. People say the Quran. I have never seen in the Quran something that tells you go unalive somebody or attack somebody that didn't do anything to you.
All right.
Never.
So the counterpoint to this is being raised in the comments, so it's not very clear as to what somebody means. But this guy Daganos, who's a frequent contributor to the comment, he generally uses this one word to cover every single thing he wants to refer to. He says, lies,
Well,
lies.
like, what do you expect, Chip? Like this guy, I feel sorry for him. He's a human. I know he's a human, but like, what kind of mindset you wanna say? You wanna sit down somewhere and write these kind of stuff, lies? It comes up. So if you know, if you're knowledgeable and you know exactly where you stand, come on up and specify it. But he won't. He's just trolling there. I don't know if I know that it makes him look bad because if I were watching him there and I see this guy going blah 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 blah, blah, I wouldn't I wouldn't take him seriously. So his family was attacked in Arab country, like because his family was hopping from an Arab country to another, and every time they jump into a country, they get attacked. Get the hell out of here!
Well, hold on one
Like,
second. This is another point to raise. I don't know what time frame that happened, Doug. I'm sorry that happened, by the way. I don't want anybody's family to be attacked by anybody. But we do know there's stories from places like Morocco and Iraq and other nations where people who were Jewish and living there relatively happily, not being marginalized or persecuted, these different gangs that were pro-Zionist visited these places dressed up as if they were regular, normal majority population Arabs, and terrorized some of these families, including doing things like destroying synagogues and other types of activities that caused people to want to leave and return to Israel so that would increase the population. They needed more people to populate the country to buttress its development. And so I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Diagnos, in terms of attacks,
yeah,
but that did
Egypt
occur.
has yeah Egypt has a lot of documents about that. People that were arrested that they were pro-Zionist, trying to attack Jewish community so they can leave. Like,
Hold on. So Diagnos, this is historical record, okay? Just go look this up, okay? I wouldn't lie about this. I have no reason to make this stuff up. There are specific historical examples of members of the more terroristic groups that preceded the formation of the State of Israel, whose goal was to disrupt the British inside of Palestine, to terrorize Palestinians to move off their land, and to go to other Arab states where Jews lived and drive them out of the country based on false attacks that were made to look like they were being done by the majority population. There's no disputing of that. That's not something I just made up. That happened. Now, I know that we like to think that the only people that can commit terrorism are Arabs. That's what we're told. But there were 2 or 3 different groups, the Stern Gang, the Irgun, and I think 1 or 2 others, that perpetrated mass acts of terror by groups like guys like Menachem Begin, and even David Ben Gurion. They were all involved in this shit. And that's how they were able to increase the population of the nation state. That just happened. I mean, I'm not going to make that up. That's what happened. So if your parents or your family was attacked, something that was completely unrelated to those types of situations, then yeah, that's horrible. If anybody in their heart has hate for another group of people for no apparent reason other than just bigoted, then of course anybody should condemn that. But if it was done as a part of that, well, you got to go to where the source of that came from. It wasn't done from the local population. It was done from instigators. Douglas says there is documented evidence that Mossad drove you. Oh, that's somebody else saying it to him. So anyway, I don't know if it was Mossad driven or if it was just the other, predecessors to Israel that did these things in terms of like these little small pockets of very violent people towards the goals of Zionism. Even Zionists even work with the H group. I mean, with the guy, the mustache guy. You probably think this is a lie too. But in order to increase immigration to Palestine, they coordinated with the mustache man to have people expelled from places like Germany and Poland and other occupied territories in World War II. They worked right alongside because rather than sending them to the work camps, they just sent them off to different places. That's one of the things that was done as far as organizing departures. That's also factually correct. So this just blanket denial of just lies. I don't know what to say. So
I'm Googling, he said, Ron, he said, I'm Googling to know about the conflict. Come on up.
and you're welcome to come up and join us and share your point of view if you think we're crazy.
Well, I wouldn't trust Google anyway.
Hey, Chip. Hey, Federico.
Hey, buddy.
What's up, Bob?
Federico, I see you using the Lebanese army sign, right? You look like
Yes, sir.
Lebanese, right? Oh, okay.
I served in the Lebanese army.
Yeah, me too. I didn't serve. I'm Lebanese, all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chip, I just stepped in just to acknowledge what you said. Did you watch Eustace Mullins' video?
I'm not sure who that is. Eustace Mullen?
Yeah, I just sent it to you. Hopefully, I sent it to you once. It failed. I sent it right now before I went live on your live. So this guy he explained how the Holocaust in Germany happened, and it's not even the Nazis. It's not the Nazis. Nazis, by the way, it's the National Socialism. The name Nazis is National Socialism Zionist. So this is where the name Nazis came from.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he explained it properly, and he explained who did the Holocaust. It's not Hitler, and it's not his general. I don't want to go there. I don't want to affect your live.
You're muted, Chip.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I apologize. We got to be very, very, very careful when it comes to subjects like that. If you have direct evidence that supports the assertion that you just made, then we can look at that first and then discuss it. But absent that, that's the kind of thing that will get the live reported easily, and it may be even rightly so. I don't want to make claims that are not necessarily substantiated. If that's fair.
This Mullen guy, he's very his history, his info. Hopefully the video made it to your inbox, and you can validate what he's saying.
Well, and just to be fair, okay, so I'm going to hold the same standard as I do for both sides. I think I got to be fair that way. So just because some person makes a video and makes claims in a video that he believes something to be the case is not evidentiary. It's exclamatory. Someone's just saying as much. So the same standard that applies to the atrocities that happen from the Israeli side. If somebody in a testimony says, "I know Sarah who talked to Jane who said this happened to her friend Mary," that's not evidence. That's exclamatory. That's hearsay.
Yeah,
So
this guy was
what is the evidence provided? If you can give some specificity and structure.
Syrian. He's a writer. He's a historian. He's not like a normal person like me, where I can make a video and post it. This guy is a well-known. So if you Google his name, you will know exactly who he is.
Okay, I just want to be very careful with making broad assertions that may not have any sort of factual backing, because there are people that take that stuff, and think rightly so, very, very seriously. I don't want to be insensitive
No,
to
I
people's
agree. I agree. I put his name
feelings,
on the
right?
chat as well.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah. So if you let me see if I can find it in the chat. What's his name again? It's
This guy.
what's his name again?
Used
I
it's on the chat.
no,
EUST.
I just want to make sure because I can't go back and look at all the different. I get tons and tons of things coming through. I can't see them all.
Okay.
So it's
EUSTACE. EUSTACE. MU.
Eustace. Yeah,
Eustace. And his last name MULLINS.
Eustace Mullins. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, I can remember that. I got a football player friend of mine in high school named Jim Mullen, and I'm going to say useless. So Eustace Mullins. That's easy to remember.
Yeah.
That's how I remember stuff, man. I got to do it that way. I
yeah.
can't remember. Real quick, there's one more person in the queue. I don't know if it's Shaq. Solimax. Let's see if Solimax wants to broaden the conversation.
Hello.
Soli? Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, what's on your mind?
All right. My mind is I'm following from for the last few weeks. I'm following your lives, and they are very interesting and instructive. So I would like to know the topic, and I have some questions about if it's about history or about the Holocaust or about the topic, please.
Well, first of all, for TikTok friendly language, just, this is something that I didn't choose. This is just how TikTok polices these live videos. We have to use sort of silly replacement words. So you can say schmolocaust or you can say H-cost, but we're not supposed to say the whole word.
Sorry.
And then the
All
other
right.
thing is we want to make sure if we're going to talk about a particular group, we want to use a sensitive description. So I like people saying things like Jewish people rather than the
Yes. Yes.
pejorative way saying something else. So to be fair,
All right.
but in terms of discussing this, there was an author's name
Yes.
that was named talking about the collusive nature between those who were the predecessors of forming the state of Israel and their relationship with the folks who carried out some of the more unspeakable atrocities during the World War II era.
Yes.
So did you want to speak to that in a way that can be not get the live taken down?
Yes. If I understand well, you talk about the origin of the state of Israel.
Well, no. Okay, again, I'll tell you what to do. Hang tight for a second. When you come into a conversation, then I want everybody to repeat it so we can kind of bring you back up. You have to kind of just wait for the flow and then jump in when you want, unless there's something on your mind that you want to talk about. Because I don't want to have to go back and repeat the last 15 minutes just so you can kind of get your legs under you. But if there's something you want to say and share, that's fine. Just be careful. We got to be careful about talking about certain subjects.
Yes, I would like to share something quickly. I really want all people of the world understand that humanity needs love, peace, and some people like the rulers and the presidents and all the rulers of the politicians are using the people's mind for their agenda. And what I would like to advise people is to unite through peace and through justice and be lovely, because at the end of the day, we are one race, one human race, and we cannot hang on to the history and claim some ideas, some ideologies in order to repeat history and to repeat war. And that's what I really hate. So people should be very careful. Race doesn't matter, religion doesn't matter, and politics, ideology doesn't matter. All of these are the tools that the politicians are using to divide people, because people are ignorant about all of this, and they are used for their own purpose, and which is economical and political, and for power purpose. So that's why I'm sharing my voice to you personally, and to the world and the people who are hearing. Sorry. So I would like to tell you that peace, love, and justice for everybody, whoever you live. Be human.
That's a very good point. I want to ask you this question because some people in chat, there's a person here today named Ron, and he made the
Yes.
assertion that the reason why people have a problem with Israel or in general in the
Yes.
region is because they have a hatred for people who are Jewish. Do you believe that to be true, or do you believe do you think the motivation for some of this conflict stems from a different point of view, a different place?
I think it's according to me, it's more about religion, because people are claiming that the first religion came to Jerusalem, and then the second one came, then the Christian came, then the Muslim came. So it's all the fight about God. So please let God be alone, because we all worship the same God, whether you are a believer or not. And it doesn't matter who came first to Jerusalem, who came next, or who else. By the end of the day, the Jewish and the Arabs are all the people who came from Abraham. So they are all brothers and siblings, but the politicians are using them to fool them, using the religious hatred and in order to sell weapons and to make refugees, in order to sell the food and all the medicines and through United Nations. So this is a business. So people, the human beings that we live without, like the citizens of the world, should understand that they should not play that game. We are not toys. We are human beings. And that's why I'm asking the people of Israel, the people of Palestine, the people of everybody on the planet, that we are created by God, and God make us secret. We are the secret. We are not animals. We have thinking, we have mind. We should share emotions, love, and peace, and we are the responsible of this universe. Nobody else, not people from the Mars, from the other planets will come. The aliens will come to teach us something. We have minds, we have brain, and we have to put aside the color, race, the gender problem, the nationality problem, the hatred problem, the everything problem. These are artificial problems. We are human beings. Why people don't think? Why people are so selfish? So we have to make peace. Peace is something that you have to do. You have to work on. It is not something that granted. You have to love your other, because if the person is not like you, it doesn't mean that you hate him. No, the person, God created it. He didn't choose to be African, to be American, to be European, to be white, to be Asian. He doesn't choose. It is the fate. God created like that. They have
Do
no
you think
choice.
that, so if I make sure I understand your point of view, you're saying that you believe that the primary motivator for the conflict we're seeing right now is religion.
Yes,
Now,
of course,
in
it's the
terms,
religion.
let me finish the comment. So
All right, all right.
if there was someone who made the argument that they believed that it wasn't about religion, but it was about the way that the land had shifted in terms of who was allowed to stay on it, do you think that plays no role in this conflict whatsoever?
It's correct. It's both, because religion came, and then religion made people build mosques, build temples, build how to call it, église. Sorry. And all of that, because that's the reason why people are fighting, because it's tied with land. So people are reclaiming, if you see the Temple of Jerusalem, you will see the Muslims from one side, the Christian from the other side, and the Jewish from the other side. So it's all about religion, because everybody say that we are the people who are elected by God. Elected by who? By God. So to be what? So they say that they are the best people. They are the one who go to heaven, and everybody else go to hell. No, please. This is wrong interpretation of the Bible, of the Quran, and of the Jewish books. Please, these people are interpreting. God loves everybody. God did not create people and hate people. No, God loves everybody who He created. Even animals, God loves. Even trees, forests. Animals in the sea. God loves everything. He didn't bring to life a living creature without loving it. It's impossible. So
Okay.
God gave us the
All right.
oxygen. God gave us the oxygen to breathe. So everybody who is sharing the same breath, that means that God has created us to breathe the
Okay.
same oxygen.
I got
Yeah.
your point. I got your point. Makes it clear. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong about this. I'm always willing to hear someone else's point of view. I saw Rod in the chat was agreeing to some extent. He said the problem was having a Jewish state in the region. I see that too. So here's where my head goes when I try to think about all this, and I've listened to a lot of people talk about it. See if you agree or disagree in the comments. My sense is, from the people that I've spoken to and the things that I've learned, is that it's not so much that anybody has a problem with people who are ethnically Jewish or even practice Judaism. In many cases, people call that the same thing in terms of the terminology, but we know they're different. I think what most people have shared that I've listened to, they said they have a problem with, is that when the establishment of this particular change was being brought about, it created a lot of disruption in the region. Now, if you're somebody who wants the outcome to be favorable in terms of the land that you may believe is rightfully yours, and the results of these processes were that you were given or were able to obtain land and then have a region that's for the people that you most identify with, that's a win. That's a W. You got something that you wanted. And I'm not against anybody getting a W. I am against people getting a W when it comes at the complete expense of somebody else in terms of how they get unalived, mistreated, moved, marginalized, et cetera, et cetera. So I do believe that there probably were people at the time, if you read up on this, that looked at this from the outside in going, oh, wait a second, we have a historic region that's been primarily mostly populated. Not that the only people indigenous are Arab, but most of the people who lived there who were indigenous were Arab. So there was the smaller population of Jewish people that were indigenous. But there was a much different size of population. And the idea that to force into a region an ethno state into which people could pour in from other regions was probably going to be disruptive. It doesn't take a miracle soothsayer to figure out that that's, whether you like the idea or don't like the idea, disruption was likely to follow. It wasn't going to be something easy to do. It's like trying to pound a square into a circle on those, those little kitty things. So in that regard, it seems to me that the friction that was created initially was about immigration, because that happened as a precedent before the state was created. And then you add into that the dispossession of land and people having to flee and becoming refugees, 700,000 plus people, the heritage, the families, the multi-generational claims to the land that they felt they had. So my take is I think religion plays a much smaller role, and that the impact, the chaos, the displacement, the anger about what a perceived injustice is what drives most of the animosity that fuels the very conflict to this day. Does anybody see that differently? Am I not seeing that clearly? And what am I missing if I am? Federico, can you tell me what I'm missing there?
I mean, you said it. I would rephrase it in a different way. That
Okay.
if you go before 1948, if my neighbor was Jewish on one side and a Christian on one side, I did not really think of them as a Christian and a Jew. I thought of them of my neighbors. Why is it after 1948 that the whole Middle East went ballistic in sectarian and religious? It was induced. People of that land were naive. They were peasants. Like you have people that just because one of the family is educated, it wasn't necessary for any of the other members of the family to get educated. Like if if one family had a doctor in the family, the whole village was happy for him. So that's how naive they were. And all of a sudden, 1948 or 1910 and all that time, all that separation started. So we have to look at how the whole thing started. Who put the plug in the wall? Who put the plug? That's all you gotta ask. And you get your answer. It doesn't take 1 + 1 = 2. Because we lived, we knew he's Jewish or he's Christian. We knew, we respected their holidays. They respected ours. We knew that we celebrated our own holidays together. I come from a Muslim family. My mom have a statue of the Virgin Mary in her room since I was a young kid, that she maintain and she clean and she keeps it. Like I have 3 daughters, and my daughters the names are one Muslim name, one Jewish name, and one Christian name. And like I said, let's go back to see what happened. What burst the bubble? Like, what happened to that bubble? Why is that from harmony, love, and peace together, all of a sudden it becomes the major problem of the world? Just say the dates, the events leads back to the Zionism ideology of slaving and oppressing everyone. You become their goy anyway. You like it or you don't. That's how it's the United States right now. United States of America right now is a goy to the Zionists. They tell us what to do. We do what they tell us to do. They want us to send our kids to get unalived. We send our kids to get unalived. They want us to go invade a country. We go invade a country. They want us to pay for their living style and all of that. We do pay for their living style and everything they want. It's like right there. It doesn't take a mathematic or scientist to figure it out. It's just right there. Look in front of you. Look at you. If you're able to buy a house or you're able to go through education without working the next 25 to 30 years to pay a student loan with the interest on it. Like, come on, man.
Here's a question I want to ask you, if you don't mind, Federico. This is for the audience to think about too. So, I did have a conversation yesterday with I don't know if it's Poker Queen or Poker somebody, and her argument was, and I think a lot of people have said the same argument, was that if it weren't for Israel, the Jewish people couldn't survive. It's like a protective shield for people to have a safe place to go from harm. So here's a question for people to put themselves through. So if, let's say it's 100 years from now or 50 years from now or whatever if it does change, let's say that it reverts back to a territory that doesn't have a delineated state, that the entire region that we see that was called Palestine becomes some different name, let's say shared land or something like that. Do you think that it would result in the unaliving of all the Jewish residents in the area or some kind of forced expulsion? Or do you think it would be assimilated in a way where we could be democratic and could be peaceful? Or is that just pie in the sky?
Oh, we don't have to make up a country. Just go back to prior to 1948 and you have the answer. Why did it have, like, why would we? You see, Abrahamic religion, the people of the book are the people of the book. So not because of your faith, I'm going to come after you.
So Federico, so Ron in the comments, I think he says Chip, obviously. I think he's referring to the fact that he believes that there would be forced expulsion or there would be mass unalivings. So here's what I'm wondering. Why did that happen in 1910, 1920, 1930? Why wasn't there a massive push to ethnically cleanse Jewish people from the territory if indeed that there's this savage hatred that's just this unending burning desire to unalive Jewish people? That's what I can't make heads and tails of those two different juxtapositionings.
Here you go. Like, I mean, if Ron, he's got a set mind or he's got a job to do to keep coming up and saying, like, again, we go back to history and we see we always lived together. We always shared our food. We always protected each other. We always fought for the same cause. And why is it after the Zionism party came to Palestine, everything changed? Exactly. Like, I don't rule out that there would be yes, I do a business deal and I happen to do that business deal between, a lot of the people in that region back when they wouldn't go to the police. They solved their issues in persons. And if me and a guy, we fight and he analyzes me or I analyze him, and in the end that happened to be a Christian or a Jew, it does not include the whole region. They were prosecuted by their families. Like if you did something, you were if you were on the wrong side, you were persecuted from your own people. So to say that, I honestly, I still until today, I again and I say it again and again and again that Jewish faith is faith of God, and Jewish people they run the same blood like the one runs in my vein. The humanity between me and them, it's just a humanity. Like I cannot, my brain cannot come up with hate just to hate. Like I cannot think of that. Like why someone hates just to hate. I wake up in the morning and I want to hate. That does not work like that.
Why do you think this is a fair question then? So two follow-ups to that. One is, and I think Ron raises a fair point. He mentioned there are a lot of countries that are majority or predominantly Muslim in terms of the population that he referred to as Muslim countries. And then he says, why can't there be a Jewish state? And so I want to add one little bit before I hear your response. And then secondly, why do you think people who keep espousing this view, this I guess feeling of fear or trepidation or vulnerability, that if the protective shell of this nation state called Israel was dissolved for some reason or shifted or changed, that it would be the demise of their entire people, that there's no other option that's possible? So in terms of the location, this is, to answer Ron's question, it's like, imagine for a second that you have a white couch, a white sofa, and somebody has some black ink on the back of their pants and they're about to sit down on your white sofa, what's the last thing you want on your white sofa?
It's the ink.
Black ink, right?
Yeah,
Now, if somebody had white out on their pants and they sat down, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? It would kind of blend.
correct.
So I think it's not so much the fact that it was a particular ethnic group, it's the fact that it was a group that was starkly different than the color and feel of the sofa. It's just a different thing to try to fit. It's the artificial imposition of something that is culturally and religiously and ethnically so different in such a stark and impactful way that it's not so much the establishment of a state, but it's the manner in which and the location of which and how it came to be that caused the friction that we're now seeing. That's my best take. Do you think that's the wrong thought, Federico? Do you think, or am I missing something, or how do you
Yeah,
see it?
I see it the same way. If they would have came in a perfect manner and without all these gangs and the business deal that the Zionists did with the British, they would have lived among us with no problem. And until today, like I hear it from a lot of people. They say, well, all these people that they were born in. If you want to live, you're welcome to live. But you cannot change history. You want to have your own state. You're welcome to have your own state within proper manners. Like go there, grow demographically, get into the parliament. This is how a democratic process is. You grow your demographics, then you have people in the parliament, then you vote on laws and you change laws. You may convert all Palestinians to Judaism, but it's not done by force. It's just a human nature. You cannot. You probably. The idea was that the old will die and the young will forget, but that wasn't the case, and that is proven for the past 70
Do you
years.
do you think that in other words, if the perception is on the majority of people who live in what they say is occupied Palestine, the people who we're calling the Palestinians, do you think they will ever give up the concept or the determination to have something that's autonomous to resist situations? And if there was an establishment of some reasonable compromise, would they respect it? Or like many have expressed concern that if someone's given an inch, they're gonna want the whole mile, as was indicative. This is not me saying this, is other, as was indicated by what happened with Gaza when the Israelis pulled out settlements in 2005 and all they got in return, quote unquote, were rockets. Do you think that can Palestinians be peaceful under the right circumstances, or are they always just going to be violent T words?
I mean, many Palestinian leaders has shown good faith, and if you heard Donald Trump last time, he said that he was sitting with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said that I sat with Abbas. Abbas wanted peace, so I asked Benjamin Netanyahu, do you want peace or you don't? So Benjamin Netanyahu went, So Donald Trump said, I know he doesn't want it. So like anything fair is fair. Like when it's fair, it's fair. And what is fair is the scale to put it on a balance. You're not better than me. I'm not better than you. Then if you don't want to oppress me, you don't want to. Why would I want to live? Nobody likes to die. We love life. So why a lot of people they say, oh, you send your children to die. No, we don't send our children to die. We don't want our children to get unalived. Nobody wants to fight a war. Nobody wants to. But if it's imposed on you, it's imposed on you. And we're not the one. If you look for the past 60 years, we've been the one that being attacked and alive and we still hold the standards of common sense.
So Ron said in the comments, he says, it's. I think it says something about a homeland. It's. I think he said, I don't know if it was our homeland. I don't want to mischaracterize what he said. I think he said it's the homeland. Whether we're kicked out, we'll always be back within 500 to 1,000 years, no matter what. So here's a fair question. If one group of people feel like they have an historical claim to the land in whatever degree, we've heard of Eretz Israel, which is this larger, broader Israel project, or if it's just the territory that's now considered to be what everybody refers to as Palestine or Israel. And the other group feels the same way because of its family ties to the land and the multi generational aspects. Can there ever be a way to resolve that that's equitable?
I mean, it's the land is holy when you call it Israel, and it's not holy when you call it something else. What is the name is holy, or the land is holy? If you care for a holy land, here's the land. What do you want to call it? Who cares what you want to call it? If it's called Palestine, it's your holy land. You're there for your faith, for God. You're not there for the land. And if you're there for for God, and that means you follow the rules of God, which is the first commandment: do not unalive. Like simple. It's not a. It doesn't take, but there is much more than that. There is. And again, and I say it, the Jews are being used by the Zionist ideology. I call up on the Jews, please, 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 for your own sake, look at what Zionism is really, not the one they tell you it is. Go search them. If I wanna believe in a religion or in a belief or anything, I have to know what am I believing in, and I'm not gonna believe in just because somebody told me to believe in.
So in terms of people who see this as their land, I've heard the Ben Shapiro's of the world saying that this is just a quote return to Zion. That's what they think Zionism is. When you say the Zionists have sort of confused or taken advantage of people who are less aware of the broader context, but other people claim that if you're someone who's Jewish, most people who are Jewish happen to be identify themselves as Zionist. Are they tricking themselves, or how do you differentiate between a Zionist and someone who's an unsuspecting Jewish person?
I believe they're just they need to do their homework. If you tell me I believe in Zionism behind something that you study, even if I disagree with you 100%, and but you believe in what you read and what you understand, even if we disagree, I will respect you. But if you believe you support something without knowledge, without really knowing what it is, I feel bad for you. Because demographically, and I hate to come to that part, I hate to come to that part, the people in the Middle East is a boiling pot. It's gonna go out of hand soon. For the sake of God and for the sake of humanity, do not drag the Middle East to a major conflict. You guys don't understand the atrocity that is going to go all over the people. Everyone, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, if you are part of that land, you're going to go through a harsh time. Save your people, make the right decision, understand. If you want to fight for the Zionism ideology that you know that's what it is and you want to fight for it, then you're ready. You better get ready for war. And if you are fighting for that idea and not understanding what is really that idea, look again. Because I hate to say that again, look at sequence of events from 1982 until today. Is Israel improving or deteriorating? Today in Jerusalem, they're living in fear. Why do you want your people to live in fear? Why did you go knock the door on the Iranian? Like, what is it going to take you to understand? The Iranian never launched an attack on Israeli soil, although there is, geopolitical war, which is these are kind of normal in politics. You want to control, they want their control. But when it comes to the existence of your people, you have to reconsider and acknowledge your position and your size and your capabilities. You cannot be arrogant with people. You're not better than anybody. You're not smarter than any Arab, and any Arab are not smarter than you. Underestimating your adversary is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see where all this stuff goes. I mean, I think right now the status quo, at least for the very, very short term, unless something more regional or global breaks out, is that with the United States positioning itself and providing the sort of unwavering support that we've seen, and the influence of groups like APAC and the ADL and others, that, and also just people who happen to identify themselves as supporters of Israel, having positions of wealth and power throughout American and Western society, it all plays a role in the supportive policies. So, do you think that if the United States maintains this role of supplying money, weapons, military cover and political cover at the UN, that the status quo will shift? What do you think is going to happen next? Because I don't see much of it changing for the better if you're on the Palestinian side of
Okay.
this until that changes.
And one thing about United Nation is something that we don't trust in. And I'm telling you, as people of the Middle East, not as government, we don't believe a thing they do. And anytime they go to meet, we make a laugh about it because we know that the outcome already before they go to meet in the United Nations. And that's why we respect the international law, but we don't expect anything. The resolution 425, it was issued in 1982, and it wasn't supposedly in 2000 when Israel pulled out of Lebanon. The reason to pull out of Lebanon was excused as executing the United Nations Resolution 425. Like from 1982 to 2018 years it took you of getting hammered in South Lebanon before you decided to pull out. So to us, United Nations put it to the side. We don't trust in it, and support of the United States militarily to Israel. I don't think it's a good idea because the world has changed. Before you had a big ships and you had a good fleet of army in the ocean, it was a good thing because you can go surround the whole world and nobody can get you. Now war has changed. Now you have drones. Like in the beginning of October, when the American decided to send the warship to Lebanon, to the Middle East, the leader of the H group in Lebanon came out and said, "We have the equipment for it." And that means it's not like 1982 where the New Jersey was parked across the street from the Lebanese border and it was fighting at Lebanon. That's not the case anymore. And it was proven in 2006 when the Sa'ir warship, the Israeli warship, was in front of Lebanon fighting on Lebanese soil. The leader of the Lebanese resistance was on live TV. That's how far they got. On live TV, he was telling the people that warship across from the Lebanese border that is fighting on our land, look at it, it's burning, and it was. While he was speaking on TV, telling people to look at the ocean, the ship is burning, and the ship was burning while he's
Interesting.
talking.
Here's one more point I want to bring up. This is an interesting statistic, which I think was talked about with a lot of concern. This was one that was talked about by people like Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League. And it was this. They did a survey among college students, college students being people from like the ages of maybe 18 to 21. And they found out that they asked college students, were the attacks that occurred on 10/7 by H group justified or not justified? And guess how many percentage says it was justified?
At least 55.
I thought it would be much lower. 73% of college kids polled said it was a justifiable attack given the context and historical circumstances of the conflict. I was floored by that. I would never believe that. I would imagine that, and of course, Greenblatt was very worried. What he said subsequent to that was, he was recorded, he said, we don't have a left-right problem. We don't have Democrat-Republican problem. We have an age problem. We have, seniors are much more pro-Israel, but we have younger people. He said, we have a TikTok problem. Those were his exact words. We have a TikTok problem. So what do you think about that? On a personal level, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but in your estimation, would a resistance attack, you don't have to talk about this one if you don't want to, would a resistance attack, given the longer term context, be understandable, justifiable? What words would you use to describe it?
It's funny. It's funny. Before the whole thing happened, I would be talking to people that I know, and they tell me, I mean, the Americans are blindfolded. They don't see what's going on. And I would tell them specifically these words. The Americans that they were raised on good principles, humanitarian, loving, peace, and all that stuff. And eventually something is gonna happen and they're gonna see. And it did. Because, average American, we know that, prior to October 7, everybody believed that we go spread democracy in the world, we help people that are in need. That's the ideology. That's what everybody thought of America. America is around the world to make peace. But after October 7, everything you taught me was well taught, but your action showed difference than what you taught me. So it was gonna happen anyway. And the age difference, there is a lot of old people that they know right from wrong, but they don't want to admit it. I have these conversations. I have a lot of white folks that are, 60, 70, and 80s, and they come to my store and we talk politics. You can say that they just don't want to believe it, and it's unbelievable that they sacrifice so much of their life supporting something that what they don't stand for. Because that person in front of me, I know he's a good human. If he sees something happen to anybody, they would run to help. So I think it was a weapon that the Western world have created that turned against them. It has nothing to do. It's just human. And when you are raised to be a human and in a humanitarian manner and look at things from a humanitarian point of view, obviously you're not going to be blindfolded. You're going to see the truth because you know what's right and you know what's wrong. And that's basically what really happened after October 7.
It's
People
interesting
start
because
seeing.
the public relations war, which is a big part of every conflict, is one that's been very tightly controlled and won for many decades by Israel and the West. And the fact that this landscape has shifted during this conflict is really a pretty amazing phenomenon that I've never seen before. So I don't know how many people in the past were pro-Israel around the world. I know it's probably different from the U.S. and elsewhere. But world opinion seems to be highly critical of Israel. Many from Israel may say, well, that's not fair. We're just defending ourselves. Do you think that the world opinion has shifted against Israel? And if so, what impact might that have in the long term in terms of things like what happened to South Africa, things like sanctions and stuff like that?
Well, one thing about the Zionists is everything is planned. Nothing come out of a vacuum. Like everything is planned. The only thing that went wrong for them in October 7, that usually before they start a war, they start their propaganda before. They set you mentally, they prepare you mentally for what's coming. But what happened on October 7 is it was so quick that the propaganda machine was scrambling. When the machine overheats and everybody start doing his own thing without a chain of command, without nothing. And while doing this, their lie starts exposing, because how many lies came up and all of a sudden they say something, then 5 minutes later it's exposed. You hear people. So it's kind of October 7 scrambled their propaganda machine, and that's what really woke up people. If the things were planned like usual, we would have not seen that change.
Somebody's asking him, says, what am I scared of? Why did you block you? I didn't block you, boy. I don't think I did. I haven't done anything in this live, if that's what you're talking about. I don't usually block somebody unless they say something violent or really personally offensive. Anyway, and one last thing. Do you think that Israel, if it did not have the support of the U.S. the way that it does, didn't have the money and the weapons and the military and the political backing would have responded the way they have? And here's one more question, which is going to be very, very incendiary. Is it possible that what we saw happen on 10/7 wasn't a surprise? That's we've been told it was sort of this lucky attack where they caught the Israelis off guard. Is it possible, many have alleged this, that it was allowed to happen as a pretext to allow the response that we're seeing?
I don't think so. If you look at the history with the Israeli response, it's always like this. Like when it happens in 2006, when the Lebanese H went into there and got the 3 Israeli soldiers and went back, it took them about the same response time of October 7. They did not know what's going on. It took them 40 minutes to know that there was an Humvee with 3 soldiers in it is gone. In that 40 minutes, these hostages were already in a good place hiding. So I think that is just the publicity they do for themselves, that they're technologically and blah, 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 all of that is just, it lacks, probably the equipment is good, but the people behind it are not. Just negligent, overrated, supremacy, what do you want to call it? The thing that again, I used to go back to it, underestimating your enemy. When you're in a war zone, you're in a war zone. When you're a soldier, you have duties. And if I'm videotaping myself on TikTok, I'm sure I'm not gonna be looking at the cameras, knowing, understanding what's happening. If my first camera goes off, and the second goes off, and the third goes off, and I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's going on. It's just unexperienced. I tell you, the Israeli army, 82, they were all motivated by the idea of Zionism. Israelis today are not motivated by anything. Like there is no inner motivation. Probably that people that are willing to die for the land are, if in 1982 were 80%, today they're on the 20%.
Yeah, the TikTok generation. And the reason I brought that up was there was somebody sent me a documentary last night which alleges that this was, just like people have alleged that 9/11 was an inside job. The premise of this video was that 10/7 was also deliberately an inside job. The two things that I remember seeing before I saw this documentary, which gave me the thought that that might be within the realm of possibility, were 2 different soldiers that both of whom used to work at the Gaza border. One was male, one was female. And they made pretty compelling cases that, according to their knowledge about how the border security is set up, the way it's observed, the way the military chain of command functions, the competency levels, the equipment, etc., that there was no way possible that what happened on 10/7 could have happened as a result of, quote, being like caught off guard, or that it was incompetence, or that he said there must have been not only equipment that was turned off, not only people who were supposed to notify people who didn't, but the documentary even alleged that members from the Mossad were involved directly in the breach in terms of facilitating allowing things to move through the territory. So I don't know about that, but the soldiers that spoke to this were so incredibly certain, the ex-IDF soldiers were so incredibly certain that it must have been this, that they said they would stake their lives on it. There's no way they could have been by accident.
I can understand what they're saying, but again, they go back to underestimating your enemy. If you know technology, people in each group know technology. They hacked the Iron Dome before. Israel knows that. There is a little kid that they followed him all the way to Turkey, and they kidnapped him in Turkey. This guy, with his cell phone, he was able to hack the Iron Dome. So that I can look up that document and I'll send it to you. There is an intelligence at all sides. Like I believe that the H group could have went into hacked their security system, changed put them down. I believe, because there is a lot of stories too where H group would hack soldiers' phone, and they would listen to them. H group posing as a female that is talking to a soldier to get his exact position. Like you, again, underestimating your enemy. They were caught off guard. H group did well executed to a certain point a plan. They did not. It would be that they did not know it would be that easy. That's why it went out of hand. Because if it was, the Israeli would have been prepared, it would have been a man-to-man fight. It would be a soldier to soldier because they would have control of their border. And since they don't, like I said, it went much easier for them than expected. And the goal was the Unit 8200, which is lately the name of the guy that runs that unit. It was released. I don't remember his name. But the target was the 82 unit, is the 8200, because it holds a lot of secrets, not only for the Palestinians, it holds it for Iran, it holds it for Lebanon, it holds it for Jordan, for Egypt, for all these countries. There is a lot of information at 8200 that is now in the possession of the H group. So this is what we see right now is a fire war. What we don't see is the intelligence war, is what has what the H group have enhanced, the documents, the plans, and all of that. This is a different kind of war, the brain wars. And the only thing is Iranian, H Lebanon, H Gaza are communicating. There is sharing information, and with the Iranian, the Russian, the Chinese share information. So all that intelligence you see flying around the world, in a way or another, is getting to the H group in Gaza. Whether you like it, Israel or not, Israel made a lot of enemies in the world.
Interesting stuff. Well, I have to kind of shut it down for this afternoon. I want to thank you for being here, Federico. This has been a
Thank
good
you, Chip.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you to the audience members. As always, these are being recorded, so this will be up on my YouTube and my Rumble channels if you want to check it out, probably sometime later tonight when I get home. And also, if you want to access those channels, they're really easy to get there. You just go to my bio where my videos are and click on the link that says Linktree Chip Barnes. Or if you're outside the US, unfortunately, that link doesn't work, so you have to type in Linktree Chip Barnes. The characters are inside my bio. You just type it into your web browser, hit enter. So thanks for being everybody. I will be on again soon. Have a nice rest of your weekend. It was great to have you with us.